Greetings and welcome back to Old Ways Rising Farm YouTube channel for another gardening video in the middle of February. Right? Now, the previous gardening video in February was about seed stratification and looking at some species that take multiple months to stratify, so you need to start that process early. Today we're talking about garden planning a little bit more specifically and knowing if your seed is good. Right? This is a common question. People will buy bulk seed and then not need it all. Or save seed from produce that you folks have grown yourself and plant off it for a number of years and wonder, well, when's it not good anymore? Okay? And the answer to that question varies on a lot of things. First, it varies from species to species. There are species of plants that have seeds which literally last hundreds, if not thousands of years. Okay? There are a lot of forest, like early succession forest species with really hard seeds, with really strong seed dormancy, that will live in the seed bank for decades and decades and decades and decades, just waiting for the overstory to fall so that they have a chance to grow and find the sunshine. Right? There are seeds that, especially like in wetland plants, like lotus, is a common example of this, that specialize in habitats like beaver ponds, where a beaver will make a pond, the colony will live there for a decade or two, the colony will move on, the pond will dry up. Well, those seeds now need to last in the ground until another beaver comes and makes another pond. And they can do this for hundreds of years. Okay? There's also species like the heavy-seeded nut trees and a lot of tropical large-seeded species that only last a year almost no matter what you do. Okay? So, huge wide range of extremes. So when you're doing this planning and deciding, is my seed good, the first question is look up the species. So if you have white oak acorns that have been stored for 5 years and you come and ask me, are they good? The answer is no. They are not still good. I don't care what you did to them. They're not good. They can only last a year. And that's a full year even is pushing it. Okay? If you have lotus seed and you ask me, I harvested these 20 years ago and just refound them. Are they still good? The answer is yes. They are still good. Guarantee it. Okay? Most of our garden species are somewhere in between. They can last many years. A lot of them, they can even last many decades depending on how they're stored. The majority of our garden seeds are stored best in the freezer. You de-seed your fruits, you clean, you dry. The cleaning and drying procedures vary from species to species. I'll put a couple examples up in the end screen at the end of this video, videos we've already done on cleaning seed. And after it's been air dry for 2-3 weeks or so, you package it and you put it in the freezer. And it will store a very, very long time that way. And I'm going to prove it to you today. And we're going to prove it to you by showing you the test that you can do to very empirically determine how good your seed is. And that is a germination test. Okay, it's a very simple test. What we need first is some seed that has been in storage for a little while. Both of these, this is some Seminole pumpkin that I grew out myself in 2015. It's 2023 when I'm making this video. Okay? So this is 8-year-old seed. Okay? And I grew these out myself and saved a bunch of seeds from them. These are Pennsylvania Dutch neck pumpkins that I bought a couple of fruits down in the farmer's market in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Beautiful farmer's market if you're ever in that area. But I got some of these Pennsylvania Dutch crookneck squashes down there, or neck pumpkins down there. It's the winter squash, not the summer squash. And same year, 2015. So this is also 8-year-old seed. And we're going to do a germination test on both of these to see how many grow. Now, this is a very simple test. You need your seed, obviously. You need a paper towel. And you need some water. So I'm going to dip the paper towel and then wring it out. We want moist, not dripping wet. Okay. That's good. You want it moist enough that if I were to squeeze this all the way, I could still get a couple drops out, but it's not dripping of its own volition. And that's pretty good moisture content for this. I'm going to stretch it back out. Okay. Now I'm going to lay these seeds across in tens, just for easy counting. I had these pre-counted and then kind of fussed them up here a little bit. So this is just for ease of counting later on. Now when you're selecting your seeds for this, don't cherry pick. If you only pick the best or only pick the worst, you will not have good results. You'll get a result, but it won't mean anything. And I'm going to do 50. Now, could you do less or more than 50? Of course. When seed is sold commercially, it has to be germ tested. And the commercial certified testing labs, they're going to do a lot more than 50 seeds. They're going to do a percentage of a large batch. I think they have to do a couple hundred minimum. I'm not sure exactly. But just little old you doing some little old seeds from your own little old garden, test what you like. If you have a big batch, the more you test, the better your result will be. One more there. If you just have a little package of seeds and you just want to do a germ test on 4 or 5 just to see if they're any good at all, go for it. Your seed, your garden, your rules. I'm doing 50 because when I count them, everyone that germinated is worth 2%. Right. So I've laid them out. Now I'm just going to fold this paper towel over so that I have good contact between all of the seeds and the moist toweling. Okay. Then I'm going to put it in a little bag. And with Sharpie marker, label this Seminole Pumpkin. Okay. Now, that's all there is to it. Will these mold? Yes, but I don't care. I'm not trying to grow these seeds. At the end of the day, this is going to go in the trash. This is a test. Okay? So I don't care if these mold. I just want to see how many poke a root out. So I'm going to take this, label it of course, set it aside. I'm going to do this. I've got a couple other seeds. I've got a big batch of some seed that I was gifted and some I'm doing for a couple of neighbors just to help them out. And each one I'm going to put in its own little bag. And then all of these little bags I'm going to put in a bigger bag and I'm going to leave them at room temperature for a couple of days and monitor their progress. Okay? Most garden seeds, if it takes about a week to 2 weeks to germinate, most garden seeds will take a lot less than that to push their root out. So in 3 or 4 days, I will check them. If they're ready to count and everything is either definitively dead or really starting to sprout and I can get a good count, fine. If not, I'll let them go for a full week. If there's still no action, I'll let them go for a week and a half or 2 weeks. I will not consider it a failed test until it's been at least 2 weeks and no growth has occurred. Okay? So, I'm going to label and date this. I'm going to go prepare the rest of my seeds, and we will rejoin as we get results. Welcome back. It's 10 days later for me, although I know it's only seconds for you, and our seeds look a lot different than they did a couple seconds ago in this film. We have reasonable germination, and this is absolutely live seed. So what have I done? Well, I ignored them for 10 days. Then I unwrapped them and I sorted out all the seeds that did not germinate. Now you need to be a little bit careful on this, because if you look, a lot of these have gone to the point that they fully pushed the seed coat off. So all of these little seed coats sitting here, they don't look like they're attached to anything, but if I give them the poke test, they're empty, right? So you just go through, give them the poke test, and then sort out the ones that failed the poke test. And these are the ones that actually did not germinate. On the neck pumpkin side, we have 20 that did not germinate, 30 that did, so that is a 60% germination rate. Here we have a 72% germination rate from the Seminole pumpkin. Now, does that mean that these lost 30 to 40% germination in 6 years of storage in the freezer? No, because I don't have a starting point. I didn't do a germination test the first year that I saved these, so I just stuffed them in a freezer and went on with life. So I don't know if they have lost germination or if they just always had this germination. I can tell you that I have tested 6-year-old seed before and had, 92, 96, 98% germination rates on it. Right? So either this is a result of loss of viability in storage or poor fertilization, pollination from the initial seed. Right? This is not commercial seed where I could look at the back of the seed pack and see what the initial test germination was. Right? So, interestingly, I have tested commercial seed that in my test tested higher than its listed germination rate after multiple use of storage. Okay? So don't be scared about planting old seed. That's the biggest take home here. Now, I can use this information, and I can just round these to about half and plant about twice as much seed as I want in a particular region. Whether I'm doing this in rows and want a certain spacing, or if you're doing it in hills and want a certain number of plants per hill, if you're doing like a Three Sisters architecture, you're going to want a certain number of plants in a certain area, and now I know to plant a little less than twice as many as I actually want, and they'll come up. And I won't have to do much thinning. That's the value of this information. Now, if you just have a seed pack that you want to see, do these lettuce seeds grow? You don't need to do 50 or 100 seeds. You just plant 4 or 5 in a paper towel like this and see if they sprout for you. It'll answer the question, thumbs up, thumbs down, can I use this pack of seeds? I would recommend that you do that before you throw away the entire pack, because if you throw away the entire pack, you know it's 0% germination. You have secured 0% germination. So don't do that. Give it a little test and see what you're doing if you're worried about it. Or if it's something like lettuce that you can just plant early, just plant it and don't worry about it. You can always come back and replant. I have 15-year-old lettuce seed that I'm still planting and still grows just fine. So, the results in understanding this are really pretty straightforward. I would encourage you to do this. The last thing I want to note is if you see this little guy, he is just starting to push the radical out of the seed, whereas some of these others are fully developed and would be a growing seedling. Now, this is something that happens even with well-stored, highly fertile seed when it's been in storage for a while. The embryo is alive and metabolizing. That means as long as it's in storage, it is using some of its food supply. This is why we freeze and refrigerate seed to slow that process down. But when you have large seeds, especially large seeds like this that have a ton of food stored, even at room temperature, they're not going to lose a lot of viability. However, they will lose a little bit of vigor. So with big seeds like this, with your squashes, your beans and peas, your legumes, like a lot of these large seeds, when you're planting them, you can go with nice fresh 1 or 2 year old seed. You can just go with the thumb stuff method and just poke them in and not worry too much about how deep they are, because they have so much energy they're going to push through the soil very, very readily. When you're dealing with older seed, it might germinate a little bit slower, and it might not be able to push up through quite as much soil. So you'll want to plant it a little bit more shallow. Give it enough coverage to make sure that it has good soil contact, good water retention, and is covered up from the birds that would want to come and eat this. But don't thumb stuff at 3-4 inches deep. Just plant it under a skim of soil and you'll be fine. So it is worth knowing, and this little guy is illustrating that point. I hope that this is useful. I hope that you will do this. I hope that you will consider planting those old seeds. And if this is useful, I would be most grateful if you gave it a good old thumbs up so the YouTube algorithm knows to show it to other folks. And I will see you next time at Old Ways Rising Farm.